So our next topic is judging different event formats. Jam session, full rounds with overall impression, and individual trick attempts with their evaluation. How does this work? So let's take on that one. Guys, so what would you say are basically the differences when we judge the different event formats? At sanctioned events, we provide the opportunity to have jam sessions. That's usually suggested for events with larger amount of athletes competing, not only to save time, but to provide all of them with the opportunity to showcase their talents. Then we have the runs, and then we have the trick attempts. So what would you say are the specifics for the jam session? Who wants to take on that one?
I can jump on this one, Martin. In the jam session in particular, the judges are looking for actually the makes. We're not necessarily looking at bails, and we're not deducting points for if you do have bails. The only thing that I would maybe stress is the more bails you have would be the less amount of tricks that you're able to make. So, but judges are.
So in the jam session, the guys who compete can focus and do harder tricks and not be afraid about the number of bails they make, like it is in the run, right?
Correct. That is correct. Yeah, we're not going to mark down our scores because of actual bails. We're just going to judge the amount, or not the amount, but the actual tricks and the level of the tricks that they were able to do in the allotted time.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that creates the kind of the overall impression at the end, right? From the jam session.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not one skater versus the other. In that jam session, their scores go to the global ranking.
Okay. So that means like basically it's not one skater against each other and then you just pick one. It's just like you evaluate them on the same criteria all together and submit the scores for the overall kind of results of the event phase, so to say.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. And what would you say is the specifics for the runs? I would say that that's basically very similar to runs in a park or vert discipline, right?
Yeah, it's the same thing.
Okay. And in street, we don't have the time until the fall. How do you approach bails in street?
Oh yeah, that I'll speak on it. That definitely differs than the jam session. As Matt was just explaining, you know, you can bail in your tricks. It's literally just giving the skateboarder the whole field of play to focus on their best tricks, hopefully. And then with runs, bails do affect your overall score. And that criteria applies to every skateboarder involved. And in runs, the idea, obviously, we were talking about before in the beginning, is how this person uses the course and, you know, ties their run together. So it is similar to park. Like, it's the idea of a flow, but obviously those, you know, criteria is different for park. But with street, it's, yeah, how do you put all of these tricks together, the line, and yeah, that's what I would say about that.
Okay. And then and when you compare these two formats, the jam and the runs, to the individual trick section.
Yeah, I think on that, the individual trick section, the skaters are only being judged on what they're able to perform on that one single trick attempt only. So, you know, the judges are definitely looking into the way it was performed, the execution of it, the difficulty of the trick. But some of the things that don't come into play in the individual trick format is the flow of and the use of the course as much, and piecing into tricks together to create a run. I think it's more focused on that trick in particular.
Okay, so you basically not counting in the flow, but you must look on the obstacle selection and some kind of other aspects of the performance, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it literally comes down, everything is applicable here. And, you can have a technical skateboarder do something very technical on a smaller obstacle. But just because it's a smaller obstacle doesn't necessarily mean that it's a lower score. So that's where skateboarding common sense comes in, because it's like, the difficulty of the trick. And yet, let's just say, for example, you have a rider who comes in and just hits the gnarliest rail, but it's a basic trick. And when I say basic trick, back nose blunt is a basic trick at this point in the evolution of, competitive skateboarding and just skateboarding holistically. So, a lot of factors come into play. We have our technical skaters, we have our big, rail skaters, stuff like that. So it's ever changing, and it does come down to obstacle selection and the trick performed and how it's landed, how it's executed, and all of that. It's detail and best trick, because it's only one trick that is happening. It's not a multitude of that what you would see in runs, where that criteria applies to that. And then in best trick, there's another criteria where it really comes down to you executing this trick like your life depended on it, and really pushing the bar with your skating. And obstacle choice definitely plays a huge role in that.
Cool. And also, like, I'm thinking more like you pay attention to details if the trick has been locked in, or how you land on the board, or like if
which we've had many instances working together where not every event, especially potentially lower tier events, are going to have the kind of technicals that we have in our booth when we're judging, and we have replay and stuff like that. It really comes down to like you being focused on what is happening. And I'm sure we've been in the booth working together, and I'm like, that did not lock in, and that does affect your score. And we can get into the fundamentals of that whole thing, and what rules apply there. And but I mean, replay is a huge asset for us, but that is not always an option. So the skateboarding common sense is always like, we know when somebody doesn't lock in, or one of us sees something that, maybe the other doesn't see, because we're human, but somebody is always watching. And there have been instances where, the trick was super gnarly. Unfortunately, somebody locked in, like missed a truck, but still managed to ride out. We will judge that trick accordingly, with all information involved with that trick. So,
everything got to count, because we're only watching one trick. So every aspect of it really counts. Because when you're like doing a sketchy trick in a run, then you have all like other tricks to make up to it. On single trick, it has to be absolutely perfect, and we have to make sure everything has been done perfectly to give the right score.
That makes sense, because in the run it's the overall impression. So if you make a little thing not absolutely perfect, you can kind of balance it with the other, and the overall impression is not hurt so much. But in the single trick, every detail matter. You locked in, you not locked in, you slip out, you do a longer grind, you do a longer slide or shorter. Those things matter when it comes to comparing and evaluating it properly and accurately.
Objective and subjective, yes. Yep. Little spice.
Sharp eyes. That's what counts.
Yeah.
All right, guys, that makes sense. I think it's time to move to the next topic,